I'll start. Amir just said that he is kind of intimidated by the number of CFOs here. So, Mir Takimir, obviously, if he would have been alive here, so he might have used a few different words. उनका शेर है कि मत सहल हमें जानो फिरता है फलक बरसों तब खाक के पर्दों से इंसान निकलते हैं. So he might have used one different word if he would have been attending the CFO conference. Thank you very much, ICAP, for this opportunity. And a couple of things before I start putting our panelists in difficulty with my questions. So everybody knows we have all been through with COVID, and this most superior species of ours was under an existential threat not long ago, only 2-3 years back. And we were all threatened. And I recall a panel discussion that I was having then, that we are under the most threatening times. But somebody said there that until and unless this is a doomsday scenario, this human race will come out of it winning. And lo and behold, 3 years down the road, the last 2-3 years have been the most technologically advancing in the whole human history. We have come a long way. And ऐसा लग रहा है जैसे कोई blast हो गया हो, something explosive has happened, and we have come into a new era. We are not longer the same as far as a professional fraternity is concerned, and as a human race, definitely not. Same goes for this finance function and the finance fraternity. I personally feel that this fraternity is resilient enough to cater to whatever changes are facing us, and with the right kind of self-awareness and with the right kind of agility and adaptability especially, we'll come out of it. I'm really happy Amir has set the tone very rightly, and for a change, this CFO conference has started with leadership, has started with talk of empathy, has started with talk of relationship, and not by rising interest rates and inflation and so on and so forth. So I'm really glad that the tone has been set really well by Amir, and let us move on to our panel. We'll be discussing mostly the skill sets that are relevant for tomorrow. I did not get the chance to change the subject because it was skill sets for tomorrow, but I would say this is a skill sets for now, because future is now, right now. So I'll start with Raymond Bhai, and he is at Habib Bank, Pakistan's largest private bank, and financial sector especially is actually at the center stage of talks recently all over the world globally, and with cybersecurity threats, compliance issues, number of banks going down globally. So how is Habib Bank coping up with this? And you as a CFO at HBL, what are the core and special skills that you are focusing on within your team and across the organization? So please.
I don't, hello, okay. So thank you, ICAP, for this opportunity, and thank you, Rizwan. Yeah, again, ye ho to better. If I can have the mic, that would be better. Yeah, so Rizwan, thank you for asking me 3 questions in one. So I'll start actually with, your question on data. Now, lots of cliches: data is the new oil, data is information, information is power. And particularly, I find that in our culture, we tend to grab onto information and guard it like, the nuclear codes. कि किसी और को पता न चल जाए, whether it's for good or for bad. We even tend to hide our own accomplishments, and we're very bad at actually blowing our own trumpet. And unfortunately, जो sales वाले होंगे, marketing वाले होंगे, वो एक चूंटी जितना काम होगा, and it will make the front pages of every company magazine. And finance वाले ने, धमाका कर दिया होगा, but the CFO will never be able to say कि मैंने ये कर दिया. हम शर्मा जाते हैं. So I think data is absolutely key. I am, in fact, a year ago, one of my colleagues in finance said, I'm hiring a data visualization engineer. मैंने कहा, ये क्या चीज़ है भाई? He said, I don't know, I made it up, but it sounded really good. But that's what we need. We need people who can take data and convert it into pictures. We are all used to dealing with obsessive amounts of spreadsheets and tables and tables and tables and pages of Excel, which is incomprehensible at a senior level. So I think data and its visualization, its management is something that is extremely key. That's one of the key skills that we are focusing on, not just in HBL, but especially these days in finance. And I think in finance it's become even more important because it doesn't matter whether you're a bank or whether you're Engro or whether you're Unilever, everybody's got a gigantic amount of data. The other thing is on operational resilience. And I think it is really becoming, it's not so much a buzzword, but it's becoming more and more and more critical. I mean, let's just take a simple look at Silicon Valley Bank, right? How could you go wrong? You take deposits and you put them in government, US treasuries, safest bloody investment in the world. I mean, किसी ने सोचा भी नहीं था. But this is the kind of stuff that in today's day and age can really come and kill you. And with internet banking, mobile banking, and the ability to transfer vast amounts of money at the push of a button, an event here can trigger something else in New York or in Japan or wherever. And so things like compliance, knowing your customer, knowing who you are dealing with, has repercussions way beyond your borders. It's no longer just limited to Pakistan, to the Pakistan banking sector, because today it really is an interconnected world. You log on to your whichever mobile app you have, and tuck, your funds have gone all over the world. So one has to be, and that one from a compliance perspective, but also from a cybersecurity perspective. And this is true in every organization. The data, whether it's data leaks, whether it's customer data, whether it's distributor data if you're a manufacturing company, whether it's proprietary information, it's what makes you you. And so these things have now become much, much, much more important than a simple credit risk or a simple manufacturing risk. It's these operational events which can just come out of nowhere and knock you for a 6.
Thank you. Thank you, Raymond. So let us move on to Amin Rajput. Amin, number of years at SAGC. It's not only a public sector entity, but a regulated one as well. So, yakna shud, do shud. So, how are those skills relevant now for finance professionals, which are not directly related to your profession, but their impact is directly on you, on the financial statements, like the regulatory ones or the legal skills? So how do you relate to them? And what will be your message to the finance professional here in developing those skills, which are obviously not the specialized skill for finance professionals, but are getting more and more relevant in terms of the environment that you are working especially, and a number of finance professionals are also working for public sector entities. So, Homin.
Hello. Rizwan, I think you rightly said yakna should, do should, but I would say many should, in fact. It's working with public sector by itself is a big challenge. And then working with the utility company, serving the half of the country, and in a regulatory environment where the product you are getting, the price at which you are getting, the price at which you are selling is all regulated. And when the regulator most of the time do not really understand the ground realities, rather than benchmarking you with international benchmarks and efficiency benchmarks, hurt you your financials. And at the same time, when though you are a public sector, but still you are listed on the stock exchange. So aligning your priorities with the government priorities and complying with the public sector code of governance is a real challenge. So remaining commercially viable at the same time serving the government's socio-economic agenda is a real challenge. But being a finance professional, of course, and we have many finance professionals working in the public sector, upstream comparatively is an easy life, but downstream, I would say, and particularly the gas industry, circular debt had been killing the organization and the overall sector. We are managing the challenge of remaining within the parameters and where the cash flows are really difficult to manage, and to paying our gas suppliers, and at the same time attracting investment in the country is a real challenge. But I would say that the finance professional should dare to join public sector and add value, because the magnitude of the business, or I would say the policy making where the whole country is benefited, we must add value to being a professionals, and chartered accountants particularly, and all professional accountants. And now when CFOs are way beyond only an accountants, because they are at the strategy level, and many of us are working for making policies with the government for the future. So I would say they must at least give it a try. Despite there are a lot of concerns, there are a lot of fears also, but there are a big population of professional accountants working with them, and add value to the nation also. We all are working, of course, directly, indirectly, but more direct contribution and value addition to the nation while working with the public sector.
Thank you, Amin. And let us now move on to Naila. I must give full marks to the panel arrangers today, because not many of you might know that we have some kind of a balance here, whereby there are two chartered accountants here, two of us, and there are two non-CAs, as well as there are two people who are CFOs, and there are two people who are non-CFOs. So somebody has done something right in terms of balancing it out. So Naila, long experience with Engro earlier, and now House of Habib is extremely diverse. Most of people know House of Habib by the flagship Indus Motor Company, but there is more to it. And as a major stakeholder, finance, you have to partner with them for development of these special skills which are relevant today, tomorrow. So how you are coping up with that challenge, and how is House of Habib's HR doing in terms of developing those skills within the overall group?
Assalamualaikum ji. Also, just another thing I would like to add. I think the three gentlemen sitting here have all done a finance role in their lives. So what I'm going to say, I would be able to know that better, and all of you sitting here. But from a House of Habib standpoint, I think we truly believe that continuously upskilling yourself is very important. And also it makes you more competitive and more relevant. And the skill sets that we see that CFOs now should possess, and like Raymond Saab's also spoken earlier on, is that the traditional role of a CFO has drifted away drastically, and we see CFOs now being more business partners. So what we've done at House of Habib a few years back, we did restructure our organizations and the finance organization, and we put it in such a way where in lots of our large businesses, we've got 11 organizations that come under from an HR standpoint. So in the bigger ones, we put in a business partnering role, and we trained the CFOs on how the business partnering role happens. I think people from MNCs, for them, it's a given. It's very common that there is a business partnering role in an MNC. However, in local corporations, it's something which is new, and it is changing slowly and gradually. So I think understanding a business, how it functions, how the business units function is something very important, which a CFO should learn so that they look at the holistic picture and the bigger picture. Another thing that we've spoken about is data analytics. I think very, very important for our CFOs to have in their teams should be data analytics specialists, or to train certain people on data analytics so that they can help different functions and different business units to be able to use that information in a relevant manner, and also present it to the board in a manner where the board can ask the right questions. And like already discussed, we should not be able to only show what's going right in a business, but with the analytics, be able to highlight the shortcomings so that we can address them in a way that can really help the functions and the business units to move to a profitable manner. I think another area which is really important for CFOs to be totally and always abreast is with the current changes that are happening in regulations and compliance. So we make sure that we continually do these trainings on a regular basis. They could be internal trainings or they could be external trainings as well. Also, as a CFO's role is greatly evolved, I think we heard Amir Paracha speak a lot about leadership. I think what's really important is that the CFOs need to be more extroverts. I've usually seen most of them a little introverted, right? I think what's also important is for them to be extremely empathetic and collaborative, because now when your business partnering role comes into play, or when CFOs are a very important part to play for the CFOs, the CEOs, they're basically their right hand. They have to be very collaborative. They have to be work in a manner where they work with the sales team, the supply team, the HR team, the manufacturing team, where they need to understand how different people operate. And to be able to understand that, I think it requires a lot of leadership acumen that the CFOs now need to build up. And we do a lot of trainings on that as well. And I think lastly, I would say, automation, technology is something that is important, not just for the CFOs, but for, I think, anybody that is working these days in any environment.
Thank you, Naila. So before we move on to the next question, there is a poll for every one of you. And if somebody could display it here. So while we are talking, you can take that poll. Everybody can. And the results will then be displayed in due course of time during the conference. So if somebody could get it displayed here. It will come to your screens. We'll just move on with the next questions. And coming to Amin Bhai. Again, talking about the all-purpose or soft skills. With the passage of time, now we see AI there, and a number of core skills are being taken up by artificial intelligence. So in a manner, it's an opportunity as well as a threat. So what do you think the focus should be in terms of developing our other softer skills like communication, empathy, as Naila mentioned, and at the same point in time, getting more time out of our total time available in focusing on development these skills, and leave the rest to the automation or AI. So how do you see that, and what's your take on that?
Well, I would say that AI is already now deep into the business. It is quite from the experimental stage now into live into the organizations, and CFOs being the sitting on a huge data, particularly with the large organizations like banks or the utility companies. I think AI has become a need. So that can enable CFOs, to predict future based on the data. So AI is very, very important. And with the time, there are a lot of expectations from CFO, either by the shareholders or by the audit committee or by the other stakeholders in terms of the financial and non-professional, non-financial and non-financial opinions or conclusions, more transparency and more governance. So AI is, it's a need of time, and definitely the finance professionals particularly have to, with it, it cannot replace the human professional, but of course it's a need, and we have to go with this. For the other software skills, as Naila said, now CFO is a business partner. Their role is very important. They're no more just a back office accountant. They are, along with the CEO. But as someone said here, that if there is a lot of achievements, they will go to sales people. But if there are problems with the data, or if there are problems, they will go to the CFO. But the role of CFO is evolving, and I think it has reached to a stage where we can see mostly CFOs take over from CEOs. A recent example is the Rishi Sunak, who was a finance minister and become the prime minister of Britain. So CFOs must always remain more hopeful. But yes, software skills, whether it's communication, whether it's empathy, for all professionals and finance also, because people look at finance, CFO or his team, more not only in terms of number, in terms of their benefits, and in terms of the, some kind of counseling. So if you go a CFO and, if he's a rude guy who is just a number crunching guy, you will avoid him going to him. But at the same time, if he has better software skills, definitely with the counseling, and it will add more value to the population of the organization, which is very important. So that's my take.
So coming to Naila and her favorite topic, the diversification. And so more and more, the finance professional, historically, they have been fond of linear growth. But the times have been changing. And I would ask Naila, how does diversification in any big corporate or a smaller corporate helps finance professionals, and how that can add value to their professional growth?
I think this is a very important question, and for large groups right now that are present in Pakistan, who have multiple businesses. I think for CFOs here who've had a varied experience in different organizations, such as a consumer company, a retail company, a services company, and a manufacturing company, when they go to a conglomerate with that diverse experience, I'm talking as an HR head and as somebody who sits with our vice chairmans and my chairman as well, they really treasure that experience. Because when a CFO has diversified experience under his belt, I think they have more exposure. They're able to add more value when it comes to business decisions, because they know how a manufacturing setup operates, they know how a retail business functions, they know sometimes if they've come from a banking sector, how a banking sector functions. Also, I think they are more privy to different compliance issues, which can help a conglomerate or a business as well when they've got a diversified experience. I think they know more about regulatory duties that are placed on different businesses, compliance issues, when it comes to the code of corporate governance, when it comes to taxation. I mean, there is so much wealth that they have in form of skill and knowledge that they become extremely important for a business or a conglomerate when they're interviewing them. And also, lastly, I think a very important aspect, apart from just the business and the intellectual acumen, I think what they also develop and gain knowledge on is dealing with different cultures. An FMCG culture moves at a very fast pace, and it's very different than to a company which is more manufacturing and more, I would say, a culture which is totally different, right? So I think they can navigate between different cultures, between different people, because CEOs at these different companies also come with different mindsets. I think they are able to navigate better, deal with people better, collaborate better. So I think somebody having diversified experience is something they should really treasure, and I feel they are more employable.
That's great. And just for everybody's info, Naila told me that she's also looking for a couple of CFOs for House of Habib. So make sure you don't miss out. Meet her during the break. So coming to Raymond's favorite topic, and he by qualification is an MIT grad, an engineer, and has something he is very passionate about telling the finance profession, and that is something about telling something as a story, the finance storytelling, where we as a fraternity lack, finance professionals as a narrative builder, as somebody who can make his voice felt. So I'll not take the fire out of Raymond's answer. So please.
Thank you. So stop me when we get to 5 minutes, please. Varna will be here till dinner. It's my favorite topic, communication and telling the story. Let me start off with a very controversial statement. We do a lousy job of preparing CAs for the real world. We do a fantastic job of preparing them for audit firms. We don't do a good job of preparing them for the real world. It's all about communication. Today, it's all about communication. You can be the most brilliant scientist in the world, and you can, discover the genetic code. And if you can't put it together in a paper where everybody else in the world can understand, it's pointless. It's the same thing as a CFO. If you come in and you can know your stuff, but if you can't explain it to someone, there's no point. And over the last, 25 years or so of being a CFO in Pakistan, I get people and they can recite IFRS 9 backwards and forwards, and they can tell me all the intricacies of auditing and what Section 7C, subsection 2 of the income tax ordinance says. But when it's a simple, bhai ye hua kya hai? We go round and round and round and round in circles. Now, communication, as I keep telling people, is not necessarily about speaking in an English accent. It's not about using fancy words. It's not about even using words. One of my best people who was a brilliant communicator, the first time presented me with an Excel sheet on an extremely complicated issue, and he said, "Bas aap jab bataye, main aapko samjha dunga." But it was so well laid out and so well presented, I actually didn't need to ask a single question. So it's not about using fancy words, it's not about using English. It's about communicating and laying things out in a manner that people understand. The second trap that people fall into in terms of communication is not focusing on the audience. If I'm preparing something for the board, my board members really don't care what section of the income tax ordinance it's coming from or what clause of IFRS 3 I'm using. So if you're pitching something to me, yes, I'm interested in the technical details. My boss, less so. The board, even less so. So you have to keep the audience in mind when you're communicating. Thirdly, I talked earlier about data visualization and engineers. You can have the most amazing set of data, but you need to now be able to present it. There is now so much data that we have to move away from Excel sheets. We even move away from PowerPoint. And you go to interactive dashboards. Yahan click kiya, ye aa gaya, yahan click kiya, ye aa gaya. That's the only way to do it because that's now the demand. Finally, having said what I've just said, English is important. Let's not get away from that fact. This is not a Sabi concept. This is not a burger concept. It's a reality of the world. Two of the most important things I've had to do were the divestment of first UBL, government stake, and then the divestment of HPL's stake, which, by the way, got $1 billion into the country and was the largest ever transaction in it. But you can't do that unless you can go talk to people in English. And again, it doesn't have to be accented English. It doesn't have to be fancy English. It just has to be proper English that people can understand. Emphasize that enough. In our CA curriculum, we do not emphasize presentation skills, speaking skills, English skills, and things like Power BI, all of that. We may offer them, we may train them, we may coach them, but then the exam comes back to strategic financial management, managerial accounting, auditing, and taxation. So who's really going to take this seriously as skills needed to pass the exam? We need to really revamp how we are equipping our students and our CAs for the real world, both here and abroad. Because one wonderful thing about a finance professional is, unlike a marketing professional or a salesperson, you are not tied to an industry, you're not tied to any location. You're so easily transportable, but we need to equip people with the skills to make them transportable.
Thank you very much for that, Raymond. Extremely pleasing to hear. So I think we have some time for question and answers. So if anybody has any questions, so you can just ask and just identify whom you are asking, and you will get the mic at you. There is somebody there asking something. वहाँ पे माइक चाहिए, वहाँ बीच में.
Can I?
You can come here.
Hi, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Asim Ahmed here. I have a question to Mr. Raymond. So, he mentioned that we need to have communication as a skill set. I'm here, sir. So we see most of the businesses leaders, or call it CEOs, make it to the top despite having the business partnering role introduced in the portfolios. Why the CFOs are still not able to be or still not able to become CEOs? Why it's the end of corporate ladder for CFOs? So is it just communication, and will that make the thing go away, or is there anything else that need to be added to skill set? Thank you.
I think I'm not, I wouldn't say the CFO is the end of the ladder, but it depends on, and I think Naila touched on this very well, it depends on how diversified your skill set is. If you have done, let's say, a couple of roles or 3 roles, whether it's in the same organization or a different organization, you stand a much more, much better chance of making it to the top. Take, for example, and I can only speak from one experience that I have of ICI, and that would take a chartered accountant, and you'd be a finance manager one day, and a recruiting head the next day, and then a sales manager the third month, and you'd be in 3 different cities in Pakistan. And that kind of rounded experience then placed you everywhere. In fact, I remember I was in ICA for 8 years, and every single CEO had been a CFO first. So there is no inherent bar. It's entirely up to the individual, but the individual has to then demonstrate an ability to run a business, to run a company, rather than be running a function.
There is time for one more question at least. Farooq. Here, Farooq bhai. He's a council member, might have been offended by your comments.
No, I was asking a different question, but I can again, if you have mentioned now, I can comment. Not a problem. We are discussing about the skill sets for tomorrow. We haven't discussed the sustainability thinking into the future skill set. So if anyone can comment to that. And since you have prompted me, so let me respond on the data analytics. For the existing members, Institute has already have a course, specific course, certificate course that is happening. Khurshid is leading it. But for the future members, this is now part of our qualification. So you have to clear the data analytics portion.
Excellent, excellent. Sure. Well, I can kick off. I mean, Engro, House of Habib, kings of sustainability here. But no, sustainability is the hot topic now. The environment, social goals, governance, every investor talks about it. I think every company is now on that path, some reluctantly, some more aggressively. Again, I can speak for ourselves. We've set down a goal of net zero by 2030, which many people internationally have told us is crazy, but it is something we are pursuing. We are putting our money where our mouth is. We 3 years ago said, for example, we would not do any new coal financing, even if that causes loss of business. So I think sustainability now in the world we live in, for people to not be aware of it and not be pursuing it with a passion, I think is a mistake. Because even investors, one of the key questions I get asked when I meet international investors is about our sustainability program. And there are lots of international funds, international investors who will not invest in companies that, for example, fund, whatever, tobacco or coal or, these kinds of industries. So it is absolutely becoming top of agenda. I'm sure Naila has much more experience of this.
Just to add a bit, the skill set of CFOs was sustainability. With the sector where I am working, there is a 1.6 trillion circular debt. We are still sustaining it, and we are managing it. And we are also, such a big sector, which is the backbone of the whole country's energy requirement. So, of course, the CFOs and the finance professional has a big role, whether it is in the government or whether it is with the SOEs.
I just want to add one thing. I think, as you all know, Pakistan right now needs lots of companies to export, and Raymond said, I think it's a very important aspect to know about sustainability, and I think it is a very valid question. We ourselves are, moving towards our focus towards export, and like Raymond mentioned, there are lots of foreign investors as well as companies that you want to do business with. Look at it as one of the key areas, and I think this is one skill set which is still at its infancy stage when it comes to CFOs, but I think it's great if we do work on it and improve it.
Okay, Rizwan, just one more question. This question I'll pose to Ms. Naila. I just want you to answer a scenario-based question that, for example, if the House of Habib has a vacancy for a CFO and you have got 2 candidates, One of our candidates is a young, dynamic chartered accountant. He's done all his data analytics. He's all there to disrupt the world and having very few years under his belt. Similarly, there is another chartered accountant who's there up for the CFO position. He's gray-haired, has a number of years of experience under his belt. Similarly, not that much tech savvy, but knows how to handle the board. So keeping in view these troubled times, what would you be preferring? The young chap who will disrupt, or the one who has got too much years experience in belt, who can wave the right the next economic issues the country or otherwise we are facing? Who would you pick as a group director of finance, HR?
Do you know, I'll just tell you right now, we have Agri Autos. Our CFO recently resigned and left for Oman. And we've got a young chap who's actually holding the fort. We announced to the stock exchange that he's company secretary as well. And I think we're giving him a year to learn the ropes, manage the board. And inshallah, if he does, we will make him the CFO. We have another company. We have businesses where we've got very young kids actually managing the entire role. So we are a very strong propagator of pushing young talent. And if our late chairman was Ali Saab, he was really, into promoting young kids. And I think we've kept that same trajectory there. And we really do, support young talent as much as we can. We give them exposure, but ये होता है कि आजकल वो बच्चे 3 years के बाद भाग जाते हैं. So the young talent sometimes is a little difficult to retain.
Thank you so much. So we all gray-haired are actually under hot waters now.
So that
No,
wraps
no,
up.
there's nothing wrong with some gray hair. I can speak on a very personal note.
So that wraps up our panel discussion. Thank you very much, everyone, for your patient listening, questions, and again, thanks a lot, Raymond, Amin, and Naila, for a wonderful discussion. Thanks
Thank
a
you,
lot.
Rizwan.
Have a good night.
Thank you, and thank you, ICAP.